Hi folks, we're working on the front lights now for the Allis D14. I'd shown you these in the previous videos, so they were mounted but they weren't wired in, so now we're working on getting them wired so that they actually work, at least the front lights. So showing today what we've done here. I don't know how well the camera will get this, but so the wires got fished in through the sheet metal, had a drill hole. The black grounding wire I just wrapped around, stripped it and wrapped around the bolt that's holding the light in place. I thought that was the easiest grounding. And then the red hot pigtail put into a butt splicing cap. You can see it's sort of the blue there in between the black of the electrical tape. I put electrical tape around it. And then we run the wire from there across the top of the radiator. You can see there are two little clamps there to hold it in place. And then we come down to tie in the other light with it, and then also this black supply line, the line going back to the switch. So this is, and again you can see I just, to ground it, I just stripped the black pigtail, the negative, or the grounding pigtail, and wrapped it around the nut there. Tightened it down. That holds the right hand light in place, or that would actually be, it's actually the left on the tractor, but I'm standing facing the tractor, so it's right on the camera. Same thing, a blue butt splicer, put the two into one, and then connected to the feed. Now there was a terminal block here from the tractor, as you can see there, that those prongs sticking up with the two bolts, and that's how they factory connected the wires. So you had the feed coming in and then two lines coming off to the two lights. But I just don't trust the insulation behind that. If it's, you know, worn out or what have you, that you're touching metal on metal, it'll just short things out and the lights won't work. So I bypassed it. Probably not the best way to go, but again, I didn't want to invest in having to buy a new connecting block and bolts and so on. I'm sure they're available, but I just didn't bother. So we'll see how this works for us, and see if we get a good connection. Now I have to, let me come up here with you. You can see the line, the wire coming out from alongside of the radiator there, coming down to here. There's another clip to hold it in place, drops down behind the generator here, and it runs along. There's a kind of a trunk of wires here, another clip there that you can see, and then I haven't finished it yet. I'll show you that when I get it there, but I'm just bringing it back to here, and I will run it up into behind the dashboard there. It'll go into the light switch. So all I really have to do is finish that run, connect that to the light switch, and then jump from the light switch over to the ignition switch, and this circuit should be complete. So we'll see how it goes. I'll come back to you with the next part with that. Okay, next step is pretty well done. What I've done is I've run my wire from the front of the tractor where the lights are back to the back here. You can see I'm by the dashboard on the right hand side of the tractor. I've wired, again, one of these connectors here. I'll show you the kind I'm using here because I have those taped up pretty good. I'm just using one of these little wire connectors here because there's a screw. I want the closed loop so that it's good and tight. And just strip the wire about 1/4 of an inch, fish it through the hole here, and then you just crimp it using a crimping tool to hold it in place. And I threw a little bit of electrical tape on to help secure it and keep it a little better. So that's how I'm doing my connections for right now. And then I put a second shorter piece of wire on here that's going to be the jumper to come over to the ignition switch. I'm going to change out the ignition switch. I'll explain that when I get to that phase, but just wanted to show you here what the next step here is going to be. Is we take, let's see if I can do this one-handed here. Take and fish the switch through the dash like that. I'm going to turn this like this. Sorry about the camera there. It still doesn't help hold it in place any better. This 14 wire is pretty stiff, so it doesn't want to, has a mind of its own. So maybe if I set the camera, well, I'll come back to you when this is in place. Basically what I have to do is put these 3 connectors over the top. The first one's just the plate that fits against the dashboard. You can see the wings on it say on and off. I'll have to get that the way I want that to be, and then 2 other nuts to tighten it down. So that's all I need to do, and then this will be in place, and my final step will be to rewire the ignition switch, and then we should have lights. So I'll come back to you in just a bit. Okay folks, we are pretty much finished with this. Now let me just show you what I did here. I did finish putting the switch in, as you can see, and I think you can see that. Up is on, down is off. I also did change out the ignition switch. Now let me explain to you why I ended up doing that. I've been using this wiring diagram here. You've seen this before in this video and previous videos. And if you look on this one, it is showing 4 different contact points in this wiring scheme. They don't have accessory hooked up to anything, but on this wiring scheme they weren't. They were just doing ignition. They weren't doing lights. That's where accessory is, where the power is taken from the switch to the light switch. So if you look here on my old one, you can see that there are 3 sets of prongs here, not 4, and I wasn't sure whether some of these that doubled up. Instead of spending all that time trying to experiment, I thought what I'll just do is, since I have the new one, I'll just put it on and I'll replace this. The other thing too is these slide on with these blades, whereas the new one they bolt on with a nut and bolt, so they should hold on better than what these do. Not that these are real bad, but just in case. So I just had to pull the old ignition switch out, let it hang down in here with the loose wires, and then I just replaced them out. What I did on my wiring diagram too is I made sure I labeled everything, just so that if I'm working down in here, I'm trying to figure out which wire is which, I kind of remember what I did. Not that I couldn't figure that out. It's not like there's so many wires on this tractor you can't, but just to save time. I also did a couple other little things. I put the socket size for the nuts on the back of the ignition switch, and also the socket size for the nuts on the back of the amp meter. Especially the amp meter was such a pain in the neck to get in at, so that way I won't have to guess the next time I do it. So I do have a box, a file box here in the shop of all the different things like this, wiring diagrams, old filter specifications, things of that nature, owner's manuals, things of that nature, so that if I'm working here, I know what I just need to dig through that and see what I need. So let's give you a quick test. Turn one click here and the light switch to on, and if we come around here to the front of the tractor, we have, whoa, I'll tell you what, these LEDs are going to really throw a lot of light. So this is the first time this old tractor's had modern lighting on it, as far as I know, at least with the LEDs, but you can see just how bright they are. Now it's daylight, I realize, but if I shine to the back of the barn there, you can see there's still plenty of light that it's giving. At some point, maybe if I have it out at night doing something, I'll do a video to show how much light they throw. I haven't wired in the rears yet, but they weren't as critical, and I have to fool around with making a splice underneath the seat here and then fishing it underneath the running boards here to get it up in. Once I do all that in the back, to connect it up will be easy, because all I'm going to do is run right to the same light switch. Here, let me turn this off so I'm not wasting battery. So that you know, it's going to run to the same on-off light switch. As I said before, I was just doing one switch for all 4 lights. So at any rate, let me move my paperwork aside here for a second, and we will show you that it indeed works. I have to confess I tried everything before I did this test just because I didn't want to be disappointed and get upset. So let's get back up here on the tractor. Turn our ignition. Light switch. There you go. Tractor runs, then the lights come on. So that's half the battle right there. And I am seeing a little bit of, if you look at the amp meter there when I turn the lights off versus when I turn them on, the battery's slightly discharging. So the amp meter is working. I don't know why it's not charging. Maybe the battery's charged enough, it's not going to charge yet. I'll have to do more research on that. So the amp meter is working. The new ignition switch is working, the light switch is working, the front lights are working. I'm happy. So this job isn't done yet, of course, because I still have to do the rear lights, but at least now the tractor is usable for day and night use again. I'm assuming it'll keep running now that I dealt with that water, or thinking that it was water in a fuel tank. So hopefully I can start to put this back together, put the sheet metal back on, put the grill on the front again, but that doesn't have to be done this instant. So at any rate, there is another mechanical job done on this tractor. So I'm hoping that this will hold me for a number of years. So I thank you everybody for watching through this process. I'll probably do another video when I do the rear lights too, just so you can see that process. But most of the wiring here at the dash is now done. I don't have to do much more with that. If I decide that I'm going to replace this dashboard light, all I would have to do is run a wire from there over to the switch as well. I'll just work that off the switch so that when I turn the light switch on, that light goes on too. Because if you think about it, if I'm needing lights at night, that's when I'd also want to have a dashboard light too, to be able to look at gauges. Not that that's critical for me in my operation, but might as well do it that way. I don't want to get too fancy with the electric on this. Let's keep it simple. So, and as I said before, maybe down the road somewhere I'll replace this cigarette lighter so that I can use it as a charging port. I don't know if there's any place on here I could hook up a cradle to set my cell phone and charge it while I'm working, but, and again, that's not all that critical, but it'd be a nice feature to have since I'm never going to use a cigarette lighter for lighting cigarettes. At any rate, again, thank you for watching, and please subscribe to our channel.